You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
I get those goosebumps every time.
In the Champions League knockout phase on Paramount Plus.
The wait is over. It's kill or be killed.
Every decisive moment gives you goosebumps.
No! Would you believe this?
I get those goosebumps every time.
It's now or never for Europe's best.
Vinicius Junior!
In the ultimate club soccer competition.
Those goosebumps every time.
It's truly remarkable.
The UEFA Champions League round of 16. Stream every match live exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Hail cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Joshua Dale Landon. Your name is Brandon Shane Kelly. Brandon Shane Kelly, how are you?
God, I'm good. I feel like last weekend, we don't need to get into it on personal terms, but last weekend was an exhausting one. And this weekend, I feel energized. And it's sort of like real life energy cannot correspond to FPL energy.
Yeah, that's true. I had a good weekend too. I had a very positive experience today, which the parents out there will understand, which is that as your kids get older, it's lots of birthday parties, right? Endless birthday parties on the weekends. And often you just drop them off, right? It's like, you're like, this is plenty,
I'm just going to sit in the car and play Wordle for 3 hours.
I did that once before. I literally sat in my car and watched a Premier League game because I didn't want to go to this party. It was really loud, to be fair. And it was like at one of these like play centers, and this is expected. But then other times you go there and you're like, you see people you actually like and you want to talk to them and you stay for the whole time. Yeah. And so that's what happened this weekend. It was actually a birthday party put on by producer patrons Noah and Louise, and their child and my child are buddies. Have been going to class together. Have been in the same class actually for 3 years in a row. Yeah. So that was fun, and it was at Soccer Roof where you and I did our Always Cheat meetup a few years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. So they had the Arsenal game, they had the Chelsea
the
game.
One and the only, the first and the last Fest NYC.
It was a positive experience in the sense we met a lot of great people. It was a very unpositive experience because Queen died and they canceled the Premier League matches. And I basically soured on England, like as a country.
Sure.
Then
we're still trying to rebuild that relationship.
It's taken me multiple years. Yeah, exactly. I like somehow I blame the entire country for that. Much like the way the entire world is probably blaming us right now for our current political situation.
Sure, justifiably so.
Justifiably so. That's exactly right. The Queen thing was maybe less justifiable, although I don't know.
Seemed like a nice lady, all things considered.
Sure, exactly. She was pretty old though. If she had been like 47 and suddenly died, I get it. I would cancel everything too,
Skip the first 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. All right. Anyway, so let's get back into it here. All right. So game week 28 it's actually not completely in the books. 9/10 in the books. We've got a Newcastle West Ham game tomorrow, which I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of ESOC he should be fine. But like the possible chance that we don't get him.
I will say I was listening to FPL Black Box with Mark and Az, and Mark Southern's our friend was very much like,
speaking of the meetup.
Yeah. Mark basically called everyone talking about Isak's demise just a bunch of weenies and wimps, essentially. And I'm on Mark's side here. Like,
Okay.
Isak is going to smoke West Ham tomorrow. Not only is he going to play, but he's going to smoke them.
Well, that's good. He is his effective ownership is 100%, so that'll be a nice even.
Yeah.
The one thing that's fun about game week 29, the one ahead of us, is this is a good top of the pod reminder: Villa, Palace, Liverpool, and Newcastle. So your boy Isak are all off this upcoming weekend because of the League Cup final,
which means they play.
What's that?
In which they play.
Well, which two of them play. Yeah, in which Liverpool and Newcastle play. Palace and Villa would have played them.
Gotcha.
And so it's, so they're in that match. And I think that, speaking of highly owned players, Isak, very highly owned. Mo Salah, practically universally owned.
Interesting news item. Josh, I don't know.
Yeah,
this just in. Mo Salah has broken the all-time FPL single season points record.
It's incredible.
In early March, his own record of 303 points. He now says 306 points. 303 points, his highest and the highest ever FPL points tally by a single player.
Yeah.
He's broken his own record in early March. It's so unreal.
Fantasy sports, fantasy and Premier League at least. We'll leave the other global fantasy games out of the equation for a second. But, Premier League fantasy has been kind of popular for 15, 20 years. I know there's like very old early versions, but, 15, 20 years.
I'm a big Sabre guy. Yeah. I was playing baseball
back in the
fantasy.
80s. Yeah, exactly. Daniel
yeah.
Okrent and all that stuff. But like it's about 20 years now, I suppose you've had Premier League fantasy. And I think there was a case to be made that he is the single greatest fantasy player, fantasy asset, whatever you want to call him, the single greatest player you could own in Premier League fantasy of all time. Obviously we're not talking about pre FPL, right? We're not talking about because even Thierry Henry would have been right at the kind of cusp, right? Maybe 2006, you could but no one was really, I just feel like FPL is basically like a 20-year-old phenomenon. So if you go from 2005 to 2025, I know that's kind of arbitrary, but if you went back 20 years, I think that he's got to be the best. I mean, the other contenders would
maybe
be
Alan
Ronaldo.
Shearer would be he has far and away the goal scoring record in the Premier League.
But Shearer would have been that was the 90s, right?
The Premier League was still a thing. I'm
not talking about Premier League. I'm just saying fantasy, in terms of FPL, Fantasy Premier League, fantasy.premierleague.com, the kind of modern game, right? Been around roughly 20 years.
Has to be on a website is what you're arguing.
I guess so. Yeah. But I mean, I think so. Or how about just this, if that makes it easier? Going back of the last 20 years, I think Salah is a strong contender for the greatest fantasy asset of all time. You would have.
I don't know if I have to. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say partially because of the longevity, right? Because at this point, his performance goes back. Let's see. I think his first season was. Let me just take a quick look here.
Don't get confused by the Chelsea seasons.
Right. Well, that's true. Actually, I guess we do have to kind of count those. But just his kind of modern Liverpool seasons. This is now his his 8th season at Liverpool. So 8 seasons at Liverpool. He has just been absolutely incredible. Every year in and year out, even on his kind of down years where Haaland surpassed him, he was still fantastic, right? He basically has not had a bad season with Liverpool. And I don't know. I think you can make a pretty strong case that he is.
I don't understand your argument here in that he is the top 2 highest performing fantasy seasons for any player. It's done. The facts are in.
I guess that's true. I mean, yeah, if you're looking at just total point, I don't really know. I mean, I don't know if there's any, is it points per game?
What is the rubric you're using here?
Well, I don't know. I'm literally just talking. I like that you are coming at me because you don't like the question or something like that. I'm just introducing the. So you think it's just he is unquestionably the greatest FPL asset of all time, and there's no debate, and there's really nothing to even debate. Is that what you're saying?
if the inciting incident of the discussion is he has the highest points total of any other player, including himself, who has the highest points total of any player ever, then
I guess I'm not asking a math question. I'm sort of in the realm of like, who's like the best player. Now, I realize we could literally just tally up the scores from his seasons and compare them to other players. And then, maybe there's some guys who, put in a Phil Jagielka played for 14 years, right? So maybe his total number of points are more than Mo Salah's, which would mean
total
by your
throughout
metric
his,
that Jagielka
throughout his
would
career
be the
is kind of like where you're going. Like,
I guess I'm just in terms of his ability to be a perma captain, in terms of his kind of career peaks, in terms of his consistency, in terms of points per game, even value for money. Like he's not free, because even Haaland at some point, like, his peak was kind of so high, right? Haaland has probably had the highest single kind of peak of any fantasy asset, but it sort of came with a corresponding price rise that made him sort of unownable, right? Or at least like not necessarily unownable, but only ownable when the performance is so incredibly good, right? That it sort of justifies it.
It's a challenge to our quant listeners of you've got Robin van Persie, Luis Suarez, Frank Lampard,
Ronaldo at the, he left after a few years.
I wonder if there were moments in which their sort of like chart on the bar chart where it was like slightly higher than Mo's. And I agree with what you're saying there in terms of just like sustained peak of Mo and over the course of a career fantasy wise, is that just like beyond more compelling than any of these other players.
I think it is now because you have that first, I don't know, or maybe he's just the most fun. I don't really know. I mean, it's just like from the first season when he kind of came out of the gate and he was so amazing. And talk about like value for money, right? I think that first season, I think he started the year at 7.5 million, something like that, his first year. And for Liverpool, of course, we're not counting the Chelsea. Do you even remember him at Chelsea? I kind of vaguely do.
I do. I remember him and De Bruyne. I have this distinct memory of watching Chelsea at Banter Bar in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and definitely seeing De Bruyne. Was Salah in that same team? I don't remember. It's and then of course I famously said when Salah got the transfer from Roma to Liverpool that he would be the most wildly inconsequential fantasy asset.
I was not going to bring that up again. Yeah, you keep bringing up Dorgu.
I was wrong. Yeah. It turns out I was wrong.
So that year he started so this is back his first season with Liverpool. It was the 2018 season. So he started the season at a high price. They knew he was going to be good. He started at 9 million, ended the season at 10.6 million. So he went up over the course of the entire season 1.6 million, which I think has to be, I don't really know what there have to be some strong contenders for that in terms of, Haaland's first year, he went from 11.5 to 12.4.
Sure. Probably like Vardy and Mahrez in the Leicester City title winning season, like low price to mid price.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be able to look at Mahrez anymore because he won't be just on the site, right? When did he leave? Was it before? It was preseason, I think. But yeah, let's just take a quick peek at Vardy. I know this is not super relevant for this weekend, but you know what, Brandon? We can do whatever we want on this.
We can do absolutely whatever we want, and then I can make a bridge. I'll build a bridge from this discussion to game week 28, which we want to just do a quick review of.
Yeah, Vardy started that Champions season at 6 million, ended at 7.4 million, so it was close, but 1.4 rise. But yeah, regardless, he's and I think we talked about this. I think maybe near the end of last week's podcast, but to me, he is like a kind of Steph Curry type player to make a cross sports comparison. There's something about the way that he plays that is, and I mean, I know, like if you're like an Everton supporter or whatever, like there are reasons that you may not like Mo Salah for like competitive sporting reasons, like the way I hate Jason Tatum for no particular reason. Like I don't like hate his game or anything, but it's just fun for me to hate him because I'm a Pistons fan and he's a Celtic. But I think just objectively, like Salah is just so fun to watch. And now that he throws in assists. And I'm not really, I wasn't necessarily planning to go on a long Salah appreciation society here.
He deserves it
he's
because he
great.
just created FPL history.
That's
so
true.
I think it's fitting that we do that. And I do think that, speaking of skipping ahead, remarkable for game week 28. It's the second game week in a row in which Chelsea have had a quote unquote soft fixture. Right. They had Southampton last week. They have Leicester this week, both home fixtures. And those were 2 weeks in which people were sort of thinking maybe an edge captaincy pick is Cole Palmer. And it must be really stinging to hear a lot of Salah breaking records talk. Yeah. If you try to be Maverick. And it's sort of like digging to say Palmer captaincy was Maverick, because Palmer in the brief history compared to Salah's long history has had it in him. And God, I do. When the penalty was saved, this was a doomsday for Mavericks out there.
I would say last week I think made a little more sense than this week. I feel like last week Salah blank, or Palmer blank, and then he doesn't play very well in Europe either. And then it felt like this week it just felt like you're basically listen, I agree. Like I've had my share of captain fails over the years for sure, and it's never fun. But I do feel like this, like on form alone, it was just really hard to go. With I had him vice captain. I mean, it's not like I thought he was like a horrible pick. Or anything,
I think the motivating thing with Palmer this week versus game week 27 was: is there any shred of doubt that Salah will start / get substantial minutes? And of course, you and I both captained Salah and bucked that argument, but that was still something that was in managers' minds that was different than game week 27.
That's true. Although I never thought he would have come off the bench. I thought like he was not going to play at all, or would have started, maybe get subbed early. Well, regardless. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about game week 28 before we talk about game week 29. I do have a free hit that is active, Brandon. Ooh. So so in a few minutes we can talk through that a little bit. But I thought we could just run through a few match notes from 28. Bravo to Forest. I got up. I woke up for the second half of this one, so that was as far as I could go. It was the second half because it's the early match here in the U.S. and Canada, but I thought that was. Listen, I mean, if you want to be persnickety about it, you can blame Ederson for not doing a better job. But I thought it was very clever of Hudson-Odoi to basically get the ball and shoot it so quickly, right? That it sort of
made good contact, as they say.
Make good contact, yeah, exactly. Well placed, good, and it was sort of. And I thought it was an impressive shot. It's funny because Callum Hudson-Odoi years ago, like, talk about old Chelsea players, right? He was supposed to be like one of the next generation of greats, right?
Is that when Chelsea really went off the rails, when they had so many they had so many young I can't speak with authority about who's an academy guy and who's not, but they had so many guys at that team, and they really just had to quickly in short order loan them out, move them on, sell them.
They're trying to play him at wing back. I remember at times it was. God. Oh, by the way, speaking of I think he was an academy player too. Maybe actually no, he moved from Leicester, I think. But Ben Chilwell came on he came on in the Crystal Palace game, and he got smoked. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like I don't know if it's the injury or if he's just like he got. It's amazing that nothing happened. He got roasted. I was watching the Crystal Palace match. I went from multiple screens to a single screen Palace near the end of that match, Brandon, and it was fun just to watch him time and time again get roasted by these Ipswich players. Not that I have anything against him. It was just weird.
It sounds like you were reveling in it.
Well, it was just it was kind of funny. Like, it was just like he kept falling down, and then the ref was like, "Yeah, this is fine." And the announcers were like, "Yeah, you got to be a bit tougher there."
It's interesting because I think we talked about this recently about Tyreek Mitchell and is his spot under threat because of Chilwell coming in, and Chilwell doesn't go to Palace without the promise of minutes. And basically, Chilwell's getting a 20-minute trial every match at the end of the match, and he's blowing it.
It's not working.
He's getting the meatloaf, you're too old, fat man sort of treatment at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, unfortunately, at least. Yeah, so at least now they know, And I mean, honestly, I think one of the stories from this weekend is, unfortunately, it's not hugely relevant for game week 29 because they don't play. But the Palace defense has been quite strong, honestly, and it's really, I have not had a great season as and many listeners will know, but they have really sort of kept me alive, like all these clean sheets from Dean Henderson, and so and he's not even like he's playing okay, but it's really just the entire collective unit of Chelsea. So I think down the stretch, fantasy wise, I think there is some value there. I brought in Eze this week. I took a little bit of a chance there. I thought he played extremely well. I was sort of unfortunate, and maybe the tone was set like 3 minutes in, and Kedia had a breakaway. Absolutely, I don't know. I mean, he was closed down well, but probably should have scored. And it was going to be one of those matches where both I felt like he and Eze and Kedia both were involved plenty and just never were able to turn into anything. It was Sarr in the end who came through.
Yeah, Sarr, he was a pick a couple of months ago, and he just couldn't put it together. And now he's put a good run together.
He's really good. Yeah, he's like a really good player. Like, it was a great goal too. I don't know if you saw it. It was really nice.
I did. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, Palace and Glasner. It's sort of they came on strong at the end of last season, and Glasner sort of got everything together. It's kind of strange how it all wasn't clicking at the start of the season, but Palace yet again had this promise of they could be a Fulham, Bournemouth, Brighton-esque team next season if they can have some measure of continuity.
Yeah, and maybe they, I guess the trick is whether you can keep Eze, right?
I don't think it's had a season that warrants a move, honestly.
No.
To be
no, that's true. I mean, it could be Mateta, honestly, who might be more of a risk, right? I mean, how old is Mateta? I don't think he's that old. He is he's 27, so he's right on the cusp. It's kind of like if he's going to leave, this is the summer to do it, right?
So Kurt Cobain killed himself.
That's true. It's a lot. I mean, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. So let's watch out. Let's keep an eye on him.
If you have Jean-Philippe's number, reach out.
Yeah, make sure. Well, yeah, and he had that injury too. So it'd be nice to do it no matter what, right? Yeah. He probably needs the support right now. But yeah, I wanted to see where they are in the table. Palace, they are up to 11th. So 4 wins and 5 for them as well. But lots of fantasy value there. Of course, not hugely relevant because they don't play in 29.
Sure. But, Munoz is worth noting because he was in on goal and easily could have just buried one. And he's been on a good run of attacking form too. He's Palace's Cucurella.
He is. He's fantastic. Yeah. And so we'll talk
Patrick
about
Van Aanholt of Crystal Palace fame.
Yeah, wow, that's an old poll right there. I have not thought about him in a while. I
feel like he was always a late season guy, Van Aanholt, where you're just like, damn, I guess I should get Van Aanholt. We
got to do another round of remember some guys. I got to keep these guys in my memory. It's like The Giver. We have to hold on to the memory of these players. So another, other Saturday notes, another blank for Anthony Robinson. It's getting harder and harder to start him right now. I'm a little. I'm not sure that there are any like terrific defenders out there, but when he's the same price as some of the Forest defenders, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I know I feel like I asked you this last week as well, but did this week change anything? Or
this week broke me a little bit with Robinson for sure, and I think it is a little. I mean, Harrison Reed popping up did not have that on my bingo card as a Fulham follower, and he was responsible for the follow on João Pedro foul that led to the penalty. And Fulham have this in them. As good of a team they are sloppy, and this does not help Anthony Robinson. And I would have sworn that he was the heir apparent to Andy Robertson at Liverpool, and now Kirkez is basically taking all of Robinson's headlines. And there's a part of me that's sort of like, oh God, I mean, God forbid Robinson go to Serie A along with a bunch of other like loser Americans who can't find their place anywhere else. But I wonder what's going through his head right now in terms of like, because this summer is huge for his contract.
That's interesting. Yeah. Does he yet another like AC Milan?
I feel like at
yeah.
this point, given that like he's just not getting the ink that some other fullbacks are, that he moves to another league, and I'm really sad for that because I love watching him play.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Let's see what happens. I mean, it wouldn't be a shocker if
he could stay at Fulham.
Yeah, I could stay at Fulham, or sometimes clubs miss out on the. Well, so we'll see. I think he's still playing well. Just a little bit of a collective kind of defensive dip for Fulham at the moment. Tough match away to Brighton, though, too. I guess we should factor that in a little bit. You mentioned Cucurella, 2 15-point returns in a row for him. It's crazy. I mean, a literal 50-50 coin flip for me between Dorgu and Cucurella. It's a 32-point swing. I mean, absolutely insane.
It's a weird coin you're working with there, Josh.
Well, it was with Gameweek29 in mind. I don't know. I mean, it was sort of like I was like, well, Man United play. I could bench. The whole thing with Dorgu was, well, I could bench him in 28 because I've got other defenders that I can play, and then it's Leicester and Ipswich for 27 and 29. Was sort of the thinking, right? Mm-hmm. Sure. And I did not know that Cucurella had back-to-back clean sheet and goals in his locker.
Yeah,
so,
that is hard to predict for sure.
Yeah, and Chelsea had not been keeping that many clean sheets either. So.
Yeah. No, I think this was the first clean sheet they'd kept in 12
since last week. Yeah.
Oh yeah, since last week, right? They've been but true to your point, they have not been easy to come by at Chelsea this season.
Yeah. But he's and I don't know, another one to consider. Not really for 29 though, I would say, right? Just because they do play away to Arsenal. So I don't know. It's like,
can Arsenal? There was a moment in that United match where I was like, will Arsenal score another goal again ever in their lives?
I know. I'm thinking about it on my free hit right now. I'm like, do I get 3 Arsenal players? Do I get 0 Arsenal players? Like it feels like there are a lot of. I mean, they score 7 goals at midweek, right? And then this week they fail to do anything, and Declan Rice is the only goal scorer for the squad.
So what do we learn from that? What do you take from that?
They just seem to lack a kind of they don't feel like cohesive at all. I guess it just comes down to injuries, but it probably goes to show that they have been a little too Saka dependent over the years, right? It does feel like they kind of lack an identity without him, but they're so talented that they can still beat teams, right? But it does seem like there's a kind of killer edge or something that's missing.
Yeah, it's sort of like against the right team. They even the younger players like Wanyeri and Lewis Skelly, they have it in them. They just have to come up against the right opponent at the right day, and PSV was that particular opponent. And it does feel like that Champions League result was such an outlier. And what we're consistently seeing recently in the league is the true Arsenal, and what makes it, as you're saying, like really difficult to back them any given fantasy game week. Just like could be just like a 1-0 loss. Again.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and looking ahead to this weekend, I suppose Trossard is still probably the pick, but he's been arguably the most frustrating of all.
Cannot
of them,
finish.
Right?
He cannot. Yeah. He had a number of opportunities, like not a number. He had like 2 opportunities against Manchester United, and he blew them.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like it's like there's good business sense, and then there's like. It's like, couldn't they in January have just found some 12 million forward? Like just somebody who can actually like to. It was such a gamble to go into the second half of the season with a legit title shot and not have anyone who can score a goal. Like it felt, is
the problem. I mean, I think Trossard can score goals, but is the problem that Arteta has in not buying a recognized number 9? The shape is just so fluid.
Yeah, exactly. He can score goals cutting in from the left, right? I don't trust him so much as a false 9 or whatever, whatever you want to call him, sort of, or just as a number 9.
So we don't need to belabor this because I really want to kind of get to your interrogating your free. But I think we can talk a bit more about the Arsenal thing when we get to your free hit in terms of talking about who you're actually like sizing up. So
I know there was a question from the patrons about, it's an interesting week for a wild or for a free hit. I think there's some interesting, it's not cookie cutter in terms of who you could get. I mean, there's a question from a Patreon listener about whether, I think he said, or they said, Son or Palmer. And I was like, I hadn't considered either one for my free hit. So that shows how many options are kind of open to you on a free hit this week.
Yeah, there's something about the fixtures in game week 29 where it feels like it's a bunch of like mirror images of teams playing each other, and the results feel very difficult to sort of armchair predict.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. All right, well, let's, anything else we want to talk about from this weekend? Oh, I thought the Bournemouth situation was kind of tricky with Evan Nilsson's back up front for Bournemouth. Ouattara drops out, comes on as a sub for Evan Nilsson, which is sort of the worry that I had this weekend. I ended up dropping Ouattara to the bench for that, because of that worry. Semenyo, maybe an injury risk, went off late. So just something to keep an eye out for. Probably fine, but just something to note. Sometimes it's nothing. And I didn't see like a lot of news afterwards. It's probably fine. But yeah, I think it is a little trickier. I think it sort of solidifies the idea that Kluivert is the kind of far and away best Bournemouth. Well, I mean, I guess Evan Nilsson maybe now too enters the equation, right? In terms of
maybe
viable assets.
Sure. Yeah. And he's positioned as a forward in the fantasy game. So that is your option there. Otherwise, Kluivert, is the best midfield pick. Like Semenyo is just withered as far as a fantasy asset is concerned, even though like his minutes risk is not the same as somebody like Ouattara. It seems like Tavernier was the person who ultimately cut Ouattara out of the lineup, where you could have seen Semenyo play on the right and Ouattara on the left, but it was Semenyo on the left and Tavernier on the right. And Tavernier rewards his manager, plays well, gets a goal. So it just to echo your point of, and Dango plays. Bournemouth have a fixture in 29. I'm looking at getting rid of him in 29, so I have some reliable personnel for next game week.
It's hard to project him starting unless
it is.
The only I suppose if it came out that Semenyo actually was injured, that would probably make me feel like, I mean, not that they don't play on the same side of the pitch necessarily, but I think that you could play Ouattara on the right, or I don't know. Like I'm not a Bournemouth supporter, but I feel like they would probably find a way to squeeze them all in if one of those guys was out.
All out attack. Let's play the chip. Play that all out attack chip. All right. Well, let's. I do want to get into free hit talk here as well. So let's just do a quick. A couple final things. One is that Champions League is at midweek once again. Arsenal and Villa both in a great position. Liverpool up 1-0, but I think it's going to be a very tough match. PSG played extremely well in that match at midweek. And then Thursday, we have 3 squads playing, all of whom have match in 29. Man United are tied in the Europa League match. Spurs are down 1-0, and Chelsea are up 2-1. I did want to note on Man United that Bruno with a sneaky 2 goals and 2 assists in his last 3 matches. So finally starting to pick up some fantasy value right after I dropped him, of course. But, good for him. Sure.
Yeah. So a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters. You can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to support the podcast. Say thank you. We've got lots of stuff happening on the Discord, and our t-shirt contest is well underway for the second half of the season, Brandon. So I'm excited to see who wins and what that kit is going to be. So, more to come on that front.
Yeah. Who will win? Of course, the contest is starting on game week 21 or thereabouts. Whoever gets the highest points tally gets to pick
second half of the season.
A kit of any choice, but it cannot be a Premier League kit. That's the only rule. And let's see, right now, the leader of that is Dan Barnes, who gets a 75-pointer so far in game week 28. Well done, Dan.
That's not bad at all. All right, Brandon. Well, let's get into game week 29 now.
This podcast is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or you're scaling your business, Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your offerings with a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. With Squarespace's collection of cutting-edge design tools, anyone can build a custom online presence that perfectly fits their design or their business. Start with Blueprint AI. That's Squarespace's AI-enhanced website builder to get a fully custom website with just a few steps. From there, get discovered fast with integrated Squarespace SEO tools. Every website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, so you show up more often on search engines and bring in more of your ideal customers. Head to squarespace.com/insight to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code INSIGHT. That's squarespace.com/insight to save 10% off your first purchase. You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
So once again, it's two squads will not be playing on gameweek 20. Interestingly, they've wrapped. Usually, they don't do this. They've wrapped some Premier League matches around the League Cup final this time around. So that's interesting. It's
Sponsored
also
by Spotify.
Yeah, it's Spotify Wrapped. It's also one of those great weekends for us here in the States where we have daylight savings time a little. Was that true in Canada as well?
Yeah, we had it today.
Yeah. So you get daylight savings time a little bit sooner, and so that means that and there's no early match, so there's no match until 11 a.m. on Saturday. Good gracious, Brandon, we can sleep in until 10:59. That's glorious.
Go tend to the crops.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, my 8-year-old is up with the rooster, but we try to alternate. They're old enough now. It's fine too. All right. So anyway, we got our matches on Saturday and Sunday. I have put together a Judge Freehead team. Now it's kind of like I just threw one together partially to have something to talk about on the pod, right? I mean, it's so I don't want to I don't want to get.
We won't hold you to it, Josh.
Right, exactly. You know how sometimes this happens where you get you share stuff and then you are like you share with me or I share with you, and then the person starts asking questions and you get kind of like dug in, and I don't want to do that right now because I don't feel that dug in. I could change quite a number of these players, I would say. So this is kind of fun looking for a lot of red in this Freehead squad, Brandon. What's up with that? So the first thing for me is because of my overall rank, I see no reason not to go for Haaland and to bring him in and captain him. I don't really see why I wouldn't do that. I think it's I think that Chris Wood is probably going to be the most popular captain pick among non-free hitters. I think you should be, but I think that Haaland is. It's just he's got the super high ceiling, right? And so let's kind of go for it. I just don't know why, if you had a free hit, you wouldn't go for him, right? Like, why do I want to have an out of form Cole Palmer away to Arsenal, right? And so I would say the front three of my free hit is what I feel kind of fairly good about, right? So I've got Evan Nelson, Wood, and Haaland as the three up front. The midfield, I would say the only one I'm like absolutely locked in on would be. Actually, two. I'd say Clivert and Gibbs White are like almost certain to have for my free hit, right? So Clivert home to Brentford, Gibbs White away to Ipswich. And then there's kind of these like third, fourth, and fifth midfield spots. And they could almost be anybody, right? Like they could be I have Trossard who plays Chelsea at home. I've got Bruno who plays Leicester away. The Bruno thing, he's so frustrating, but Leicester just looks so bad, and he actually is in a decent run of form. And I don't know, like I can. It feels like it kind of makes more sense to me than some of the other picks. I mean, I've got Mbomo first bench right now. I would actually consider starting Mbomo over Bruno too. Like there's, I'm sort of like kicking around some different ideas. I don't have Son. I don't have, I don't have Palmer. I don't have any of the, I don't have any Fulham assets. And that, I guess, so between, there was a question from a Patreon supporter about sort of like forward assets for game week 29. And I do think that Evan Nilsson, Wood, and Haaland are the kind of top three assets. This is, of course, assuming, that you're on a free hit, right? Like if you were not on a free hit, I do not think it's worth moving heaven and earth to get Haaland, right? It's a 1 week rental only, I think is where his kind of value lies. But I think that you could certainly make a case for, for going forward with Raul Jimenez. Partially for me, I've just had Raul Jimenez for 15 weeks and he's kind of a mixed bag, and he sort of delivers when I don't expect him to. And I started him this week and got a goal, so he's in my good graces at the moment. But I do slightly lean towards Evan Nilsson over Jimenez.
Yeah, the Fulham Spurs game is an interesting one to think about. I mean, Son hasn't started 2 matches in a row, and in terms of like Spurs assets you'd actually go for, it seems
they're off the table, right? They're just not even fantasy relevant.
Yeah,
right
and
now.
They're away at Craven Cottage, and this feels like a great game for Fulham to get. Like hugely disappointing result against. They defeat Brighton and they go 6th on that day. Just like everything that Silva would have aspired to. And it's blown up in their face. I think that this is just it's a London derby. It's a great match for Fulham. I hate bringing Spurs assets in on a free hit this game week. I wouldn't do it.
Would you lean Evan Nilsson over Jimenez, or would you go Jimenez over Evan Nilsson? Yeah, Brentford. So Evan Nilsson, just as a reminder, they host Brentford, and Jimenez and Fulham host Spurs.
I would lean Jimenez, because I do think Fulham, they attack when they're home. I mean, they just have such a well-rounded approach, as do Bournemouth. But I think Bournemouth is to me a more curious matchup, and one that I could see like coming to a stalemate at various moments, where the Fulham Spurs match, I would imagine, would be a little more open, and Jimenez is just a killer if he gets a moment.
That is true. I mean, I may go back and forth on this one over the next handful of days. I mean, his form is kind of like intermittent form. I mean, it's ultimately fine. I mean, considering that he's a 5.5 million fantasy asset, I think you kind of get what you're getting decent value for him. Just looking back at his last like 8 weeks, it's like it tells the story, right? Goal in 28. Blank in 27, blank in 26, assist in 25, goal in 24, then blank in 23, 22, and 21, and then a goal and 2 goals actually in the Ipswich match in 20. So all told, I mean, it's not bad, right? I mean, that's 4 goals and an assist in his last 9 matches. Like it's a perfectly solid return. I think
just picture that goal against Brighton in your mind. The way he took that cross down on his chest. Yeah. Oh God, he's so good.
I'm glad he's like back and playing well. That got him to double digits for the season too. 10 goals in a year.
Yeah. God
so I think the real tricky thing for me is, and I think with the midfield spots, it's kind of like have some fun. Go, you're on a free hit. Enjoy yourself. Like I'm having a poor season.
Treat yourself.
Yeah.
So who are the treat yourself players in this free hit that you're suggesting?
I guess
who would be the players where you're like, I'm so like, where does Holland rate in the treat yourself?
Well, if I captain him, it's pretty high. I think like it feels pretty fun. Like it feels crazy and reckless, but fun. I mean, it's not a great, like it's not an obvious week for the captaincy outside of Chris Wood, I suppose. And I do think that he's an excellent captain pick. Maybe I end up captaining him in the end. I don't know. But like, I think that, Holland, Wood, I haven't had Chris Wood in quite a few weeks, and so having him back is fun. I'd say Gibbs White is a fun one for me to have. I haven't owned him all season. I really enjoyed watching him play all year. He did get the assist for the Hudson-Odoi goal. Kluivert feels like a lot of fun. His ownership is high enough that maybe that one's less exciting. Trossard, I don't know. It's honestly hard for me to imagine having Trossard at the moment. Honestly, I should just drop in Bomo or slot in Bomo into that spot. I'd feel more confident in Bomo getting some kind of return than Trossard.
Trossard has been such garbage the last month. He's so just frustrating. You would think he would seize the moment. Like, this is why you're at Arsenal, man. Yeah. And he has blown it every conceivable step of the way.
I would say in general, I have a little wariness around some of the European players, especially people who play on Thursday. Like that definitely makes Spurs less appealing. And I suppose it does make Fulham slightly more appealing as well, right? Because you have a lot of these teams, and especially the teams that play on Thursday, have pretty big, they have big second legs upcoming, right? So they're important matches. And so I think Ait Nouri, I think probably will end up starting in my defense, because why not, right? In terms of high upside defenders, he's cheap.
Very
attacking. Not that really matters in a free hit. But what's that?
He's very attacking.
Yeah, he's very attacking. Maybe Southampton score, but even then he might still get something out of it. I would say Gvardiol probably doesn't stay on my team. I've got him there right now, but I honestly think that Kirkaz would probably be a slightly more fun player to have to start.
Why Gvardiol in the first place? Talk to me about that.
I don't really know. I mean,
let's talk about City. Let's talk about City on the free hit. I think this is something that people are. City seem very vexing in terms of they're very sort of teasing in terms of form, and it never really coalesces into something that's really compelling. But there they are.
I think it's just that feeling they're a good team, and they have good players at least, right? I mean, they're still ultimately a good team. They're fighting for a Champions League spot. We're not talking about 18. We're not talking about they're not relegation fodder, right? And just a couple of weeks ago they beat Newcastle 4-0 at home, right? It's not impossible for them to put on a good performance against a good squad. Even the 1-0 win away to Spurs 2 weekends ago was a good result for them. So and Forest is now good enough that a 1-0 loss away, I don't think is necessarily super telling. But you can't deny that they, got smoked by Real Madrid. They got smoked by Liverpool. They got smoked by Arsenal. We have seen a lot of it, and
a lot of smoking.
Yeah, and Brighton are playing super well. So I'm sort of.
I feel exactly. Brighton are the weirdest matchup for them to get in this interesting game week.
All right. In real time, Brandon, I am moving Kirkaz into the starting spot over Gvardiol.
Kirkaz is in I'm moving to Champions League winner Liverpool right now.
I know. Now I've got this nice I've got a whole left flank, or I guess right, whatever it is, my left. Stage left, whatever. Yeah, I've got a whole flank of Bournemouth players now, Brandon. I like the look of it. Kirkaz, Kluivert, Evan Nilsson.
Okay,
that does seem like fun.
If you're looking at going all in on Bournemouth, and it's kind of a mug's game to try to play the guys you favor against their opposition. You want Bournemouth players. What do you think of Brentford? Right, and this is the Premier League this season, more so than the last 5 or 6 seasons. I feel has been results are more unpredictable than ever.
Yeah, I think
but it begs the question: what do you think about Brentford right now?
I think that's a good question, and I think it also gets at the larger question of on a free hit. And hopefully, by the way, I know that not everybody, or maybe not even most people, will be on a free hit, but hopefully, just talking about these players at least, is helpful. Just to think this stuff through a little bit. in terms of like your transfer this week, I think there's a question about what you wanted of a free hit. Like for me, I felt forced into doing it because I just got so many things wrong that I would have had to burn like a -8 to even get somewhere close to a free hit squad. It just didn't really make sense. And I just didn't want to. I don't know. I mean, it was just like I just had to go my own way a little bit in terms of free hitting this week. I do want to talk about your transfer moves in a second. Maybe you can even share your team in a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the question is, like on a free hit, it probably depends on your overall rank to a certain degree, but do you want to basically try to tell a story about what you think is going to happen this weekend, right? And try to kind of maximize the return. So if the story is, as you're asking me, do I think that Bournemouth are capable of like a big win over Brentford, right? Like a 3-0, 4-0 kind of like thrashing. And then it's like, do I think that Leicester are going to just capitulate and maybe concede a dumb penalty or just let in, a couple of goals from Man United, kind of regardless of their form, right? Like these are the kind of stories that I'm telling. I guess the other story I'd be telling here is that I don't really trust Arsenal or Chelsea, right, to be consistent enough in order for me to pick the right players, right? Yeah. And so that one just has like a 1-0, 1-1 kind of feel to it. I probably will stick with Gabriel just because I think there's a kind of there's a little bit of a hedge element there, right? Because he's going to be one player like everybody has in fantasy. But also I just think that he's got a decent chance of a clean sheet, always has a good chance of an attacking return, right? And so I think he just sort of makes...
Which he hasn't received in...
That's true.
Eons, not since game week 17. He hasn't scored a goal since West Ham game week 13.
I know. That's true, but I'm still a believer, Brandon. I mean, Timber honestly might be the slightly better.
That was one of my takeaways watching Manchester United is just how mobile Timber is, and thinking about Gabriel and Saliba to a degree, and the emphasis on set pieces with Arsenal, and you think, that's where the production is. Well, not recently.
Yep.
And just looking for mobile players, and Timber for sure is popping up in the attack in good places.
And as far as goalkeepers go, I mean, I picked Pickford, I guess, just because I wanted a little bit of balance. I didn't love an Arsenal double up. Because I just feels like there's a good enough chance that with all the talent that Chelsea have, that somebody could pop up and get get some kind of attacking, goal, score a goal.
I like Raya on the bench though. That's a flex on a free hit.
That's a luxury free hit kind of. We'll see if that lasts. But that was just I sort of did that for fun.
So playing the free hit, did you feel like you didn't have funds for anything that you wanted to do? You had enough money.
I had all the funds I needed, but I didn't. The thing is, because of the players that I've kind of loaded up on, all the Bournemouth players, it really didn't stretch things that much. I think I still have 1.5 million left after this, and I think I probably will ultimately drop Gvardiol. I don't think Trossard makes his way into my squad, and so if I let's actually look at the fixtures for a second for game week 29. I think I honestly just think Pickford is a reasonable shot for a clean sheet on that Everton West Ham match. I do think that there's a pretty good chance it's one of the better home fixtures, I'd say, for this upcoming weekend. And so who I do not really have any players from right now. Just the keeper for Everton. I suppose you could look at Jared Bowen if you felt like I don't know. Let's see how West Ham look tomorrow. Ipswich Forest. I've got 2 Forest, no Ipswich. Although I thought Delap had some nice. He always looks good. He's always great player. Even when they don't I do think he's almost for sure going to move somewhere, right?
He will be Chris Wood in a few years.
Yeah,
he's got the Chris Wood build.
He does, and he's got the kind of he's got I don't know. He's like a charismatic presence on the pitch, right? It feels like he's you never forget he's out there.
Reminds me of of super mobile Mitrovic in a way, where he's a terror. And he seems to relish that. Chris Wood is the nice guy, and Delap is
nice Kiwi. Yeah, exactly.
You sometimes you want a guy who's just my job is to not be liked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But yet he's still lovable. So, it goes to show. Sometimes attitude is everything. For Man City Brighton, I think this is kind of a hard one. I think you could consider looking at some Brighton attacking assets, but there's none that I necessarily love. Like if they were home for Man City, I probably would look more at like someone like João Pedro. Possibly even Welbeck, but I think away. It's not that I think they won't score, right? But I just don't quite know. Do I see them scoring multiple goals, right? And not really. And so if it's like one goal, then you're kind of gambling that your player is going to get to the end of one of those goals. Southampton Wolves. I mean, nothing for Southampton, and then Wolves. It's just Eight Nuri. I don't really know who else you even kind of look at for Wolves, right? It's even though they're still kind of capable of scoring goals. It's really like a mixed bag in terms of who gets the returns.
There were zero standouts against Everton this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. It's so fun. Bellegarde is like always the one who pops up. Like it's like
you're like pass
every 10 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Then Bournemouth Brentford, we talked about that one already. Arsenal Chelsea again. To me it feels like it's like 1-1 just feels like exactly what we're getting out of this match,
sure.
Right?
Agreed.
And then Fulham Spurs, I think is kind of I don't know. I mean, we did talk about it a little bit already. I think that Raul Jimenez is a good shot. Is there anyone else in Fulham that I should be considering now?
It kind of strikes me as an Emile Smith-Rowe match, though his time in the lineup. I mean, he's getting more consistent starts now. He's getting more in Silva's good graces and fully fit.
I guess I would consider a Fulham midfielder if I felt confident and.
But I wouldn't. I wouldn't on a free hit. Like free hit is if the assistant managership has taught us anything, it's like, okay, here's your chance to predict the results.
Right.
And the free hit, if you're just predicting the results as we're kind of going through these fixtures, Fulham Spurs feels like 2-1 either way. It could be 2-1 Fulham, 2-1 Spurs. It doesn't feel like that big of a spectrum that you would gamble on a person who you weren't even sure was going to definitely start
or even play like a full 60 minutes. Right. Yeah. So I think that's really what it comes down to. That is the one little problem with Jimenez is that he is a little bit of a, it can be frustrating with him because the clock is ticking sometimes. Going into the.
I bet he starts this match.
No,
I bet he
does too. Yeah.
But yeah, again, you're like you're going for the utmost certainty with the free hit.
Yeah. I mean, Evan Nilsson is I suppose there's a tiny bit of doubt. I mean, he just got his first start this last weekend, but I don't know. When he starts and scores, it does make you feel like he's probably solid in that lineup. And then Leicester Man United.
Same logic applies to Jimenez, to be fair.
That's true. And Leicester Man United, no Man United defenders for me. Not even going to try that nonsense. And then Bruno, I mean, I've got him right now. In terms of fun, it is kind of fun to have a player in the last fixture of the game week. I don't, I don't think his ownership is going to be very high. And so there's at least, I'll end the week with either satisfaction or great disappointment, but.
So the thing with Arsenal is, and the commentary was pointing out this, Manchester United are sitting so deep, like they have so much territory to cover for a counterattack. Yeah. And guess what? Like the foul that was given by Trossard was part of a in transition bad counter. Yeah. And I could just see Leicester sitting deep plays to Manchester United's weaknesses. Like they're not going to be able to break Leicester down. And I feel like that's the worst of Manchester United that you see is a team that just tries to low block them to death and they can't break it down.
I mean, you're probably right. I don't know. It's just like, I wish there were some midfielder. I guess I could just, doubling up on the Bournemouth midfield might be another thing to consider. If I did that, if I went with like Semenyo and Kluivert, then I could, and I could still start Kirkaz in that case, and I could just bring in Jimenez, over Evan Nilsson, right? So that would kind of maybe solve that problem. So yeah, I think it's tricky though. I mean, would you consider any of the Chelsea midfielders, Palmer and Cuckoo, like if you were on a wild card, or a free hit?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
It just feels like there's so little upside. Arsenal could easily give up a goal to Chelsea for sure.
Yeah.
But then who are they giving it up to? Are they giving it up to Enzo Fernandez? Okay.
It's the same. It's the same problem with the Man City midfield. I feel like, right? Like, could they score a couple of goals? Sure. Like, who's scoring them? Like, if Foden was, this is just his lost season.
He's so far removed from any thought of a goal that City have on the pitch right now.
Does not feel
it's crazy
fun to have him. Yeah, exactly. No. Now the question of captaincy, and then let's move on to your squad after this. But the question of captaincy, I do think, for me, I do think that because my overall rank kind of stinks, I sort of feel slightly inclined to take a swing at a Haaland captaincy and just hope that it works, right? It doesn't feel like I have a lot to lose. But I do think that sort of logically, like, I do think that Chris Wood is probably the best captain pick, right? So strategically, I like Haaland because his upside is a hat trick, right, or whatever. Like it's it's very high.
Sure. If you guys in City get chopped down, he pulls a Mo Salah and just gets a couple of penalties.
Yeah, and Marmoush, I think didn't even start this last weekend. I think it's just too risky for him too. I don't trust him.
I don't think he's been a good investment for anybody, and I do feel for people who went in for Marmoush the last couple of games.
It was worth a shot. Yeah,
I suppose I will say. Bit hasty.
Maybe. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my team.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about what you're thinking for this?
Okay.
This
so I'm not on a free hit. So maybe this is a little bit of instruction for people who are looking to play free transfers into gameweek 29.
You have 2 frees or 3 frees?
I have 3 free transfers. Okay. And if you're looking at the screen on the YouTube or just follow me audially, I can field a full team if I start O'Shea in goal or in the back line, but then I'll be missing a goalkeeper. So essentially what I'm showing here is that Watkins is gone for Chris Wood. And one of my takeaways from this weekend was Chris Wood's performance, even though he got a 9-pointer against Brentford or against Brentford, was one of the more pitiful striker performances I've seen in a while, particularly like his breakaway where he just clearly was waiting for Flecken to do something and he had no clear, not even idea in his head, but instinct. Yeah. And this is what you want from your number 9 is show me some level of killer instinct.
Right. You want him to be like unconscious, right?
Yeah.
Like it's,
And Watkins has shown none of that this season. And I cannot, even though Watkins has been in fits and starts really good the last month or so for fantasy, I cannot wait to get rid of him.
I mean, you got to give him some credit, though. I mean, I know you were trying to, but he has been really. I mean, I don't know. His consistency is.
But what have you seen from him? Like just like watching him on the pitch. Like, are you impressed by these points? Are points, and that's the fantasy side of it. But how sustainable do you see this?
I don't know. I'm trying to give him a little bit of credit for it being trickier. I do think that every team with the first year, every time a team like kind of cracks the Champions League, who's not one of these kind of consistent year in and year out teams, I feel like it's always a tough year for their top performers because they're all playing way more matches than they have in the past. And, doing that kind of Wednesday to Sunday, Tuesday to Saturday, right? It's like it's sort of, and so I agree. Like I think they have like a little more discombobulated at times. And I mean, he lost his spot for a while, right? I mean, he literally was backing up Duran until that red card. And so, I mean, I don't totally disagree. At the same time, 13 goals and 6 assists. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, he could finish the season with 18 goals and 10 assists or something like that. It'd be pretty, which is pretty good.
It's a little bit of a tangential argument. I mean, he would have to go regardless going into game week 29 if you're not free hitting. Yeah. So Watkins becomes Wood, and then Allison Becker gone for Matt Sells. at Forest. That
Okay.
feels
Makes
to
sense.
me the
Yep.
best situation against
Yeah.
Ipswich.
Yeah.
Even
Why
though
don't I
they're
just
away.
Why don't I just have cells? That's a good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the third free transfer is I'm zeroing in on Dango Tara.
Yep.
I don't know who he goes to. All right, so let's do this in real time. If we make transfers, who can I afford? And let's play that game. So Allison to Sells, done. Watkins to Wood, done. These are all the top guys at
easy
the top
moves.
of their game.
Easy moves.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Dango out, and I have a budget of 8.5.
Wow.
So this is
the player that there's two players that I think that I love. I would that I think are both great picks for this weekend that you can afford. And that's Gibbs White and Kluivert. I think that those are both. Kluivert is a lot of upside on pens. Maybe I slightly prefer him over Gibbs White, but Gibbs White is also he's a little more fun. His ownership is a little bit lower. It's a little more of a gamble, but sometimes that can be
Yep. I agree with you on both of those fronts. And I'm going to think about both of them. This move is like my mini one player free hit, because if we look at game week 32, maybe a wild card is an order ahead of there.
Yep.
To get ready for a bench boost, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I think there's lots of different ways on the 8.5, even Bruno for a 1 week punt. But
I don't see you doing that.
I don't see me doing that either. So that's
it's so funny.
plan.
He is the 6th highest scoring fantasy asset. And we talk about him like he scored 1 goal and 0 assists this season.
It's not been a banner season for midfielders.
No, that's true.
And Son is just below him, and you're just kind of like, God, what a it's
Diaz,
like a rock bottom for Son.
Diaz is just what's going on with him? It's crazy. He had such a great start, and now it feels.
It is a crime that Morgan Rogers, who has played every minute of every match on planet Earth, is not even ahead of James Maddison.
Sure, points played alone. This was your argument for Phil Jagielka being the greatest fantasy asset of all time.
Yeah. Sorry, you pulled me up on that. Yeah. So anyway, I'm in the mode of keeping it simple, keeping my powder dry, 3 frees, and not looking at a -4. And I think that
those all look good.
In terms of strategy, I feel like if you're not free hitting, the -4, I feel like in game week 29 puts you at a disadvantage, even if you're looking at starting 10 players. I hate a -4 this week, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. I mean, I think that there are a lot of fun. I don't think this is a bad week to free hit. I think that there are plenty of fun and interesting assets out there. I think
fun week to free hit, but a -4, I guess, is kind of where the position I'm staking up.
It really depends on what your kind of next move is. If there's some player that you really like for 29. I know some people are looking at wildcard 30. Some people are looking at a wildcard even later than that. And so I do think that that is something to keep in mind as well. And I guess part of the appeal of Kluivert, we should note too, is that in 30 they host Ipswich, right? So it's Brentford at home, followed by Ipswich at home. So you really get a nice double at home with those assets.
He's become a talisman, and you know what?
Super fun.
You know what he has, Josh? What is
Moxie?
He has Moxie.
He does.
AKA penalties.
Oh, he's got pens. Yeah. Well, pens and Moxie. It's a good combination.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what else do we have here? Okay. So we talked about forwards. I talked about Evan Nilsson. Final questions from Adam G says, this point is either Sar better than no Sar at all. So we got multiple, Spurs Sar and, Palace
Sar
yeah,
versus Islamani Sar.
Yeah, lots of Sars out there.
Well, I mean, Crystal Palace Sar has huge upside with Southampton in game week 30, and then a double in 32, as abysmal as that double kind of appears on paper.
Yeah,
Poppy Sar. That is, I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure how serious a question it was. I do like the idea of. That'd be an interesting,
SARS. What about the infectious disease?
I guess if you had to, if you could infect a rival team with SARS, that would be a move. What if you had to move through the alphabet with your transfers in a particular season. You had to go A to Z.
Like an
Brandon.
acrostic of.
I mean, I don't know. Are there any players who even have a Z in their name?
Who was that? Who was the Moroccan guy who played for Chelsea? Was he a Z guy?
I can't remember, and I guess Lamine Yamal, we need him to move over from Barcelona before the next season if we're gonna implement this alphabet strategy, Brandon.
Hakeem Ziyech is who I'm thinking of.
Oh yeah, Ziyech. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's at PSG, so we'll see him in midweek, Brandon.
Ziyech.
We'll see him in Liverpool
in street clothes in the stands, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is that for the pod. I feel like we actually covered quite a lot. Lots to debate. We'll be back with our Patreon pod on Thursday. I should have a cleaned up wildcard team by then. All of your moves seem pretty straightforward to me, Brandon. So I suppose it's about just waiting for injuries. But I think captaincy. I think we're both firmly on Chris Wood. Or I mean, as the optimal pick.
Yes, I feel like if you're not moving to Holland, and I agree, I support the view that Holland is an interesting punt on free hit.
If you have nothing to lose.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the whole idea is Salah has corrupted every captaincy conversation every game week. Him off the table, I feel like does eliminate risk in terms of you just putting the armband on whomever.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you're taking a huge risk putting it on Wood versus Holland. And I don't think anyone's going to hurt you this week.
Right. Yeah. I'll still have Holland in the squad. Right. Yeah. So there's a little bit of a hedge built in there. Yeah. And, I mean, if Wood gets a brace and Holland blanks, well, that's the gamble you've got to be willing to take, So, all right. Well, looking forward to the Champions League in midweek. I think that, the Liverpool PSG match, I think, is a dangerous one for Liverpool. I think that'll be a really interesting game. I was talking to my friend Louise, a producer patron, and she doesn't have Paramount Plus, and I was actually selling her on it because I think that they do such a good job with their coverage. I'm really I just think that it's a
free ad.
What's that?
Free ad.
This is a free ad, but you know what? When someone puts together a quality product and it makes my enjoyment of soccer/football, I am very happy to freely plug them. Yeah. And so, for $6.99 a month or whatever, to me, it's get
it together, Louise. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, it's worth the money. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Brendan, do you want to thank our producer patrons?
Absolutely. As always, if you want to support the pod, go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. Lots of tiers there at any level, but the highest level that deserves our greatest thanks is the producer level. We thank you, producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, Dave Wagner, Lodol, our buddy Chris Howell, Andy Penn, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Brian Chin, Bob Ascoon, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, Terrence O'Donnell, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, as he does it, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Sham Shower, tongue twister, Craig Jackson, Caleb Robbie, Brian Clark, Thomas Tisloff, Fro Jacobson, Gareth H., Shalin F. Kadakia, Rishi Nigam, and Noah and Louise. We're watching you guys, and we're hearing. We're hearing and listening.
So we're on a listening tour, listening and learning. Yeah.
Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Matthew Skinner, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Rune Sandberg, the three Jims, James Murray Wood, James C., James Holland Scully, Craig at Total Maths Tutoring, and Francis Mann. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us wherever you get your socials. And go to our website, alwayscheating.com.
All right. Thanks, all. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Rest of your weekend. Bye.
I get those goosebumps every time.
In the Champions League knockout phase on Paramount Plus.
The wait is over. It's kill or be killed.
Every decisive moment gives you goosebumps.
No! Would you believe this?
I get those goosebumps every time.
It's now or never for Europe's best.
Vinicius Junior!
In the ultimate club soccer competition.
Those goosebumps every time.
It's truly remarkable.
The UEFA Champions League round of 16. Stream every match live exclusively on Paramount Plus.